Sikhs from around the world by showcasing their professions, passions, and perspectives. I'm your host, Nihung Singh, aka the Nihung. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Happy birthday, man.
You had to throw that in there, dude. And it was also very awkward off the side. I didn't know if I was supposed to say Fateh with you or after you.
No, you did it fine. It was perfect.
Okay, good.
Okay, my guest today in the Nihung's arena is Inderpal Singh.
Before we get into anything else, we gotta tell everybody where the Nihung phrase came from. Okay?
I was going to do that. I was going to totally give you full credit. I was just about to say that I've known you a very long time. I mean, geez.
Too long, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, you must have been like 8 or something when
I
first met you at the camp. But circa, what, 1995? 1995 or something?
No, it was not 92 camp, and Proud Like is the first time I remember.
Oh, yeah. No,
that was the year
93 Tennessee camp,
yeah.
And then 93 Detroit Smogum. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I kind of got my dates wrong there. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. It was 92 was the year that I got in a lot of trouble at camp. And then 93, Kuldeep Uncle purposely put me in your and Paul and Bobby's kind of room so that I would learn from you guys. And I guess it kind of worked.
Keep you in line.
Exactly.
and we were just abusive teenagers, basically. We just abused you.
Yeah, I mean, so you guys were just as big punks as I were, but you listened to Keaton, so everybody thought you were great, and that's all.
Oh man, it was the best. Everybody just thought we were such little saints at the camp. I mean, it was awesome. No, but soon after that, when I was doing all these graphic design and building websites for Sikh Youth Federation and like akj.org and all that kind of stuff, you came up with the nickname, the Rocking Net Nihung.
Yeah,
that's what you called me in an email once.
Yeah,
and I was like, I like that. Net
and
Nihung.
Then you emailed me
cool.
back, I'm like, can I use that? I'm like, I don't have a patent on
it. And then you went by the name Cyber Suda.
Yeah, which I still do on my usernames.
Yeah, is that like your Twitter? Like if people want to follow you or whatever, it's at Cyber Suda.
Yeah,
and that's 2 A's.
Yeah, 2 A's. And then, funny enough, when we got our dog, everybody wanted to name him Suda. So,
like the real Suda, not the cyber one.
No.
All right. Why don't I give you a chance here to kind of introduce yourself, to give a little bit about your background, what you do, and the kinds of things you're passionate about, and then we'll just jump right in after that.
Yeah. So. Proud Canadian, did computer science at Waterloo, and after graduated, came out to the States to work at Microsoft on product in Windows and Office. Before I came out, when I was at Waterloo, that's when you and I kind of connected, and we started S2 Media. People can figure out what the S2 stands for, I'm sure, pretty easily. But it was through that we worked on stuff like akj.org and some other things. And so it was definitely good days back in the late 90s.
It was a lot of fun. I feel like we all used to we could get together, and then it was kind of like the cutting edge of all this, internet and websites and media stuff. And
I remember it was like Vancouver Smogum 99, and I remember recording stuff at Smogum and then going into the principal's office at Khalsa School, and then overnight uploading real-time files to put them up on akj.org. It was wild back then. Now it's so easy.
And that 99 Smogum, Vancouver Smogum, was quite famous. I mean, that's was it by Niranjan Singh? Bandana Har Bandana. That was such a popular track for so long. Everybody was listening to that.
That was fun. So we made 1,000 or 2,000 CDs on a 2 CD set of that Smogum, just because it was fun. I was living out there for the summer, and they're like, hey, just rent whatever audio equipment you want, go have fun. And so we just created a mini studio at the Gurdwara. It was awesome. But But after graduating, moved out to Seattle. We're there for 3 years, then went to business school at Northwestern Kellogg in Chicago. And then we ended up staying in Chicago, where I worked in management consulting at McKinsey, and then strategy and operations at HSBC, the bank. And then some of McKinsey friends called me over to Connecticut to a hedge fund there. And so I worked there for a couple of years. The family, we all decided we wanted to come back to the Midwest. And so that's when I started the company I run now back in 2012. And we moved to Michigan, 20 minutes away from y'all.
Yeah.
And North Shore Partners, basically management technology consulting firm. So we work with a number of companies like IDEO, the global design firm, the XFL. I work with the leadership over at WWE. That's been a fun one. So it's been a lot of fun, just on various strategy and technology topics.
Yeah, you actually know, like, you met the McMahons, and your daughters played soccer with Triple H's kids or something.
Yeah, I mean, that was when we lived in Connecticut. We were in a town called Westport, and that's where they lived. So we would see them on the sidelines, Steph McMahon and Triple H, and then now, given we work with WWE. I work mostly with the other leadership, CTO, and so on and so forth. But every once in a while, there's a meeting with the rest of them.
Yeah, is that how you made the connection though? Was because you knew them?
No, my partner actually worked with one of the executives at AOL, and then when he came to WWE, he pulled.
So it's completely independent. It just happened to cross paths with you again.
Yeah, it's just,
I mean, the drop kick Triple H on the sidelines.
Yeah, that would have worked well.
That guy's a monster.
Connecticut crew is small though. Like, so, everybody knows everybody else in kind of Fairfield County, Connecticut. But it was also not a very diverse place. And
right.
I'm in Michigan, and I'll tell you something, man. Like the family couldn't be happier with being where we're at. It's diverse, great schools. Everything's awesome about the Midwest.
Yeah, and you guys even got like a great location in Michigan, right? I mean, being in Troy. What's that?
We had a great realtor.
Yeah, can you please tell the audience who your realtor was?
The Nihung's real name is Rick Dulai.
That's my real name.
RickDulai.com. I hope that works.
Yeah, that does work. You can watch other YouTube videos that I made there. No, but I'm saying more like from the point of like accessibility. You're right at the cross of highways. You're not that far from the airport. If you want to get to Chicago, it's 4 or 5 hours away. You want to get to Toronto, it's 3-4 hours away. Cincinnati, Smogum, and other traveling things within a few hours. It's actually a really great location, and I feel like a lot of people just overlook Michigan because they have this idea of what Detroit is like. Well,
the thing that we particularly love is, especially in Southeast Michigan, where we're at, there's great diversity. For me, my parents are still up in Toronto. I just 2 days ago got my Canadian passport after 10 years, given all the insanity going on right now. And then so hopefully I can convince the family to move back. But it's like an awesome place, great place to spend the summer with kids up on the lakes and things like that. So Michigan's kind of this, I think, a bit of this hidden secret. But we moved here versus going back to Chicago because of all y'all guys that we grew up with, right? So Sick Camp was here at Proud Lake, and then the Helu, and then we just knew that the crew that we grew up with was here, and so it was just it's a very strong, good Sangha that's in the area.
Yeah, and even like Kuldeep Uncle was only an hour away.
Yeah,
he was in Toledo at the time,
right?
And so that was cool. And actually, it's funny because I think since you guys moved here, we were meeting him and interacting with him more than we normally did. Even though it's only an hour away, it seems so far. But then you guys kind of became the connection for everybody.
Is it? Right? Yeah, you cross a border, you think it's far away, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't that bad. But that's really like those camps and retreats, I think were so important to so many of us, right? Like
that's where we connected with everybody, right?
And I talk to kids now, and like they just haven't grown up with Sikh camps and retreats the way that we did,
right?
And they're always like, how did you meet all these Sikhs across the country and stuff like that? Right. I'm like, you got to come to camp, man.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's true because at that time, especially, there wasn't really social media. We weren't connecting online at all. We were only able to connect in person. In 95, when Kuldeep Uncle did that SYF retreat, I think it's the first retreat of its kind in the North America, because he handpicked and invited people from Canada and America all over, all in their 20s, like young professionals or college kids. So it was kind of like everybody had an idea that you go to camp and then you graduate camp and then you just go on with your life.
Right.
Kuldeep Uncle wanted to create a next generation of leaders, and he invited people. And those first two retreats, I think, you saw the birth of things like SciNet, which Sikri and all these Camp Fateh and all these things kind of came out of SciNet originally. And then you obviously a lot of the how Siana works now and the Siana retreats, and then other retreats and camps that came up kind of thinking, why don't we do that too? A lot of people met originally, in Detroit at that retreat, and then kind of went out and did other things. So it kind of worked exactly how it was designed.
And I think that, so there was about 100 people at that first retreat in 95 from all different parts of, not just geographically diverse, but it was also from a thinking perspective, pretty diverse. Right. And I remember 96, the next year, when you had Jetta folks with Taksali folks with, I
actually missed 96 because I was in, because we had the Dayton Ransby, Akan Kirtan Jatta's Ransby. My now sister-in-law.
We call it the aluminum foil Ransby because there's like
that's the one with the foil in the background is the insulation, right?
But in 96 was wild because there were so many different so-called Jathebandis, right? Yeah. Which is basically the city of Toronto now with all sorts of different Jathebandis. But
I always thought it was interesting at retreats, a lot of different people, different backgrounds, different levels of, Sikhi or their view of Sikhi, and they all got along. We were also excited to just see other young, like Amritari people. We didn't care.
People, right?
Yeah, we didn't care what your Maryada was necessarily.
And that's where, I've lived by this notion of anything for the Panth, and it really came from the mid 90s where I just saw like 100 people from all different parts. And really, Kuldeep Uncle started it at that time because he saw this trend, which is unfortunately continued, of people just losing their Sikhi as they went off to college. And so that's why retreat was always, it was 18 to 30 initially.
Right.
I mean, then we all got old and,
and we just bumped the age limit as we got older.
but it's true. And, now it's more, high school and college, you start losing kids, camp A group, which is 14 to 18, generally 15 to 18. The numbers are far lower than any other group, whether it's summer school or just interest. Right. So retreat was really a focus on addressing that age group of college kids plus to keep them connected.
Yeah, no, it was really great. I mean, the connections I made from then, they still last till today. And I got to see the birth of a lot of things. I mean, even things like the Sikh Coalition, some of the original people that started that met at these retreats in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And then when 9/11 happened and there was a spike in hate crimes, they were motivated to do something and they just didn't hesitate. They just got active. Right. And I think that came from this idea that we realize now that there is a network of us across the country with different skill sets, and we can reach out to each other and get things done.
Yeah, it was special. Now I think there's a lot of noise. And so back then in the mid 90s, it was just that group of people. Like, of course, there was a lot of Panthic minded people all across the country doing all sorts of cool things, but it was just, it's kind of the, if you've heard of the PayPal mafia, right? So it's Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all these different guys that have gone on to go do big things.
Right.
Some of them are crazy people, but they've gone to do big things. And so I have always think of it like that, which is, that just happened to be a point in time where people came together and they've gone on to go do important things.
Well, okay. Now, like taking all the experience you had, different places you worked. I mean, you were a project manager at Microsoft.
Project. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Product and project manager at Microsoft. Then you were at McKinsey, and then you were working at the hedge fund. And I mean, these are like some of the top places people would want. These are like dream jobs for people. You had 3 of them, and I'm guessing with varying degrees of experience that you're pooling from now. And how are you taking all that stuff and implementing it like in your philosophy that anything for the fun? What are you doing with all the things that you've learned?
I should be doing a lot more when you put it like that. But like, I think that there's a couple important things. One is you have to pick, at least from my perspective, and my focus was to pick something and go deep over a period of time, meaning decades.
Okay.
So for Kuldeep Uncle, who's been a mentor and leader to many of us, his was really Sikh youth education and Panthic unity. Those were his 2 big things. Yeah. And so for me, I said, like, what is going to be my focus? And I remember it's actually a 2009 retreat. Myself, Manpreet Singh from Florida, and Mandeep Singh, who's in Troy now, was in St. Louis at the time where the retreat was. We just, we're having conversations about Dasvandh and how it wasn't nearly as much in the conversation for us as it was for generations past. And so that really became the focus.
Wait, just to clarify that, what you're saying is you felt like all the books we read, all the history know that our parents and grandparents' generation, maybe they had a clearer concept of Dasvandh, and our generation really wasn't talking about it at all.
100%, right? Yeah. 100%, because all of the important things, like Bani and Sikh history and things like that, those get quote unquote airplay. But and also the notion of seva. But Dasvandh's critically important for us as a community for all of the obvious reasons, right? But most importantly, because our Guru said so, right?
Yeah, right.
Our Guru said very clearly that both giving back in all sorts of different ways, not just with your time in seva, but with your Dasvandh to go and help those less fortunate is of critical importance. And so we just wanted to elevate the conversation around Dasvandh, both from an educational perspective, and then also from an opportunity and accessibility of where to give. Because, when you talk about translating what I learned in business to Panthic activity, we started doing this as the way we would a business. We said, like, look, venture capital and angel funding for businesses are a very well-known pattern. Why don't we have the same thing for Sikh activism in the United States? And so we really wanted to provide a reliable stream of funding to Sikh activists to go and make great things happen and create this flurry of Sikh activism. This is back in about 2010, so about 10 years ago. And really, we started the way we would any other kind of venture. We did market research.
Right.
We interviewed people qualitatively, and then we sent out a survey, got quantitative feedback back. And the original idea was to start a Sikh endowment fund called the Dasvandh Fund. And when the market research came back, it basically said people want to see a direct connection and essentially a feedback loop of where they give.
So wait, hang on for a second though. When you say a fund, the idea would have been you're just kind of collecting money from all these people, but then there was no clear way for people to see where their money is going to go, and that your market research is showing that people need to see that connection in order to give more.
100%. So I think the clarification is the way the endowment fund would have worked, and what was originally in our hand is you collect funds from the Sangha, you let those funds grow, but the interest off of the funds each year is what you distribute out to projects. So projects would apply for grant money essentially, and then from the interest from the funds collected. So if you raise $1 million fund and you're able to get 8% returns, $80,000 a year is what you dole out. There was a couple of things with that. First of all, we were a new team. Nobody really knew us outside from our little pockets of Sangha. And so that was one obstacle. The second obstacle
because there's credibility issues, right? Because people are like, I'm just going to give these people money and they're going to grow interest on it. And what are they going to do with it exactly?
Exactly. because it's not a very, like, nobody really knows how Harvard's endowment fund works. And so that and the traceability to where I'm giving and what they're doing with it, those two things coupled together were just a no-brainer to start a crowdfunding platform. And crowdfunding in reality wasn't that big at the time. Kickstarter was just getting started. There were a couple of others, but it actually made it harder to start DVN because there weren't a lot of great patterns established on how we should do this.
Right, but that's probably what forced you to be innovative.
And so we just said, like, we went back to let's do research, let's kind of create designs, let's test them with people, let's understand. The challenge was we were all very busy with our full-time lives, and this was kind of the side of the desk. So I remember every evening I jump on a call with some Sikh organization, whether it was SolDef or United Sikhs, and say, hey, here's what we're thinking. What's your feedback? What would be important? And then Sikh activists, because the goal has always been organizations are more well-known. The Sikh activists sitting in Sacramento, California, they may not be super well connected. How do we get them exposure for what they want to do, as long as we've vetted that they're credible and we think they can do what they say they do?
So what was an example of somebody that you would consider an activist that isn't getting that kind of attention? Like, what would have been an example? Yeah,
there was a project maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and the name of the project is escaping me, but essentially what she was doing, she was from California. What she was doing was she was basically putting on plays on Sikh topics. And so it was very simple. Like she listed 2 projects, $5,000 for the first one. It was $4,000 for the second one, to run these plays essentially on various Sikh topics. And that money, and from her point of view, she's using this money for costumes and equipment and whatever to put on these into marketing or whatever. And nobody's paying attention to her because she's so isolated and so small. So you guys are able to bring this attention. Well, and she was from a smaller town, right? So the Sangha Network's limited. And so, for us, right? Like, we look at it and we might say, well, 9,000 shouldn't be that hard to raise, but she was a college student and she was doing awesome things. Right. And to get support, she launched right before this Month of the Week, which I'll describe in a second, probably 2014, 2015, raised the funds pretty quickly. And it allowed her to go in and put on these performances, which, again, this notion of a flurry of Sikh activism, for me, it goes back to the VC model that says not everything's going to be fantastic. In this case, it worked out great, but look, some things will work out, some won't. And the ones that work out for you will have large outsized impact. And so you just got to invest in various different pieces in Sikh activism and see where it takes hold, and then pour gasoline on those projects and activists that make traction. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of things, right? And they need a little bit to keep going or to get it started. If not, everybody isn't some big, huge organization trying to do this big, huge project that needs hundreds and thousands of dollars of funding. Right. And everybody starts small, right? So how do we get people started? And that's, again, there's a great feedback loop there that says this activist listed this $5,000 project. We can see the video they produced, or the play they put on, or the book they published. Right. And then they come back and they do it, maybe a $10,000 project, and then a $20,000 project. So you kind of get that credibility built by starting small. It kind of reminds me too, like Singh Sabha movement, like early 1900s, a lot of the successful Sikhs, they were doing 0% microloans for Sikh businesses. Yeah. Just to get them going so that they would could make a lifestyle, could create a living, and feed themselves and their families, and then grow their business. Yeah. And they just, it was a loan, and they could pay it back. And I'm not sure what all the qualifications were, and then what all the terms were, if they always required them to be paid back or not even. But the idea was that Panthic-minded people wanted Sikhs to succeed and were willing to help them in their life and business. And this is a little bit different because you're talking about particular projects that people are doing for Sikhs or for Panthic reasons.
but it maybe is it? And is there anything in DVN that's outside of Sikh things or Panthic things, or are they all Sikh oriented?
So historically, it's been either by the Panth or for the Panth, right? And so, going back to early camp days in the 90s, Buljinder was one of the ones that we used to hang out with. He has a Wasa that's on DVN. And so it's an orphanage they set up in Africa. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be for the community. Our philosophy has always been like, let's let the Sangha decide where they want to give. There's just got to be some connection to the community.
Right. So in that case, Buljinder is a Sikh who set up this charity in Africa to help Africans. But because he's a Sikh, he qualifies under DVN's requirements, which is either it's got to be by a Sikh or it's got to be for Sikh.
Right. The most recent example, and given what's going on today, is we did a project with Beam, so the Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook.
And so really, it was just a time that called for our support of, in whatever small way we could, our support of the Black community. And so there are instances we will run campaigns such as that are of strategic importance. Back in January 2017, we all know what time that was. We did a short 2-week fundraiser for the ACLU. We raised over 40 grand in 2 weeks for the ACLU. So there are times where the moment calls for our involvement, and we think it's important to participate.
Right. But it's still a Sikh spearheading the activism towards, like we need to fund the ACLU, so let's take this approach.
And so
those Sikhs just happen to be you guys.
Initiative to start that, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So DVN. So you are vetting these people somehow. Do you guys talk about what your criteria are? Is it published? And what are those criteria?
So I'll give you the high level bullet points. It's all published on dvnetwork.org, but the high level bullet points start with just a knockout criteria. So you either have to be Gurmat aligned. If you're not, it's just not a fit for DVN. And so Gurmat aligned can mean, Gurmat aligned can mean many things.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. But like, for example, you're not trying to fund like a Bhangra show necessarily. You're more focused on like, is this like maybe like a Sikh children's coloring book effort or something along those lines?
Yeah, in high level terms. And so there is a particular approval committee, which reviews all projects, and it's independent from the operating committee of DVN or the board of DVN.
And they can make exceptions if they feel like
it. Well,
all right.
Depends what you mean by exceptions.
Man, you are like a lawyer.
well, look, that subcommittee, what it does is say, is this by and large something that's going to benefit the Sikh community?
Right. Okay.
And so that's the highest level kind of lens on this. Is it going to benefit the Sikh community and move the community forward? After that knockout criteria, it's things like, what is the confidence in the leadership team? Of course, if it's an established organization, like a Sikh coalition, then there's not much discussion on a new project they might list. That's a bit of an expedited process. But if it's a brand new to DVN type of venture that is not a public charity like a 501c3, that's really where we spend a lot more time getting to know the activists, jumping on a call with them. Because if we are essentially stewards of the Sanghat's funds, then we just have to have some reasonable level of confidence that this money is going to be used well. And that's why we'll start off with smaller dollar projects to allow them to prove themselves.
Yeah. And so you see, for people that are listening that have been maybe skeptical about donating to DVN or hadn't heard of it before, clearly you guys have a serious vetting process. There are people involved that are evaluating. And I don't know what level of transparency you guys have, but like, do you have numbers that say, hey, this is where we started at, this is how much we raised, and this is how much we've distributed in funding, and this is where we're at now? since we started? Do you have like numbers like that show
100%. So
progress?
we have, so on the bottom of the homepage, we have a lot of stats. Every single project that has been funded is still listed there.
Okay.
There's an annual report that talk about our expenses versus the donations and how much we took in tips. So all of that's completely transparent. And then the other thing I'll mention is, over the past 12 months, we have merged with another organization. So Ikmunzal was an organization that had more of kind of a membership community to it. So it was closer to the fund that we talked off the start, where they have a certain set of members that each give high dollar amounts, and they pool their funds together, and then they hold an annual weekend where Sikh organizations come for funding. And so it's very much a grant giving model. And
is it like Shark Tank? Is that what it's like?
It is. It's absolutely that.
Really?
It's nicer, but
they're not sharks. They're like nice fish.
DVN ourselves, when we wanted to go in, so we launched beta in 2012.
Yeah.
And then we started, I think 2016 or 2017 was our first year to participate in Ikmunzal, because we wanted to hire an executive director, like our first full-time hire.
I see.
And so we went there, and they helped fund our first full-time hire. And that's how we started as on the pitching side is how we started off with them. And then over time, over the past, call it 18 months, we just spoke to them and say, like, look, we want to hire a very talented new executive director, somebody that has a very credible resume in essentially the startup area. Has relevant business experience, somebody that can help us push this from raising $600,000 a year for the community to millions of dollars a year for the community, because the money's there.
Right.
The brand awareness.
We're a very rich community. I mean, we have a lot of money as a community. I mean, I don't know that we are at the same level as like the Jewish community, but the Jewish community seems very consolidated. Their front is very consolidated, right? I know inside they have a lot of disagreements and stuff, but they don't play around with their history. They're very organized with what messaging they need and what things they need to get done. We could be just like that, right? We have the money, the intelligence, the resources. I'm sure you run into that.
That is something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
I've done the math that says how much should we be raising a year, right? We took census data and we said, here are the projected number of Sikh households. So basically we said, like, look, if there's 600,000, just call 500,000 Sikh households, Sikhs in the US.
Yeah.
You applied the census data that says from the ages of 22 to 65, that's kind of the working population, right? Which is in the 60s of percent, right? You call it 300,000 Sikhs that could contribute in some way. Now it's a little bit less because the number of kids we have is more than the general population. But anyways, the point being, you have a couple 100,000 Sikhs that can contribute to this fund. And given the Sikh community is no different. It's a little bit different than the general population makeup, but there's just a wide band of income across the community. But there are a lot of people that are above the average household income in the US. And so when you do the math, it's pretty staggering that if people, not even if people gave 10%, if they gave 2%, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Of what you could collect. And so the fact that we're saying in the arc of time over the next decade or 2 decades, we want to be raising, in the tens of millions of dollars for the community as an organization, it's totally achievable. But we have work to do as far as brand awareness and furthering kind of some of our other initiatives and our product offerings and things like that. And so going back to the start, when we first started talking about DVN, I think we're getting to a place where, so we think about this over the long arc of time. Dasvandh is where I want to spend my time. And so the first decade has been about establishing credibility. After the merger, through both the grant arm we have as Dasvandh Network and the crowdfunding platform, will be between 1 and 1.5 million that we give out this year. Next year, hopefully, it'll be between 1.5 and 2 million that we give out this next year in 2021. And so we will see a path towards growing that. But over the next decade and the decade after that, there's no reason we shouldn't be doing tens of millions of dollars each year for the community. And even then, given, to your point, how much our community has at its disposal, we should be shooting higher.
Yeah, no, interesting. And DVN also is doing the accounting, right? So like it's easy for me to plug in and say, hey, I want to donate even like $50 a month to something.
Yeah, so
you guys are doing all the accounting. I don't have to worry about the person that's receiving the money, how they're accounting. I can have faith in you guys that you're going to do the accounting correctly and you're going to have all the correct receipts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so the process is you can donate either through credit card or ACH bank account. We generally encourage people to do ACH because the fees are much lower. And so, and then in your account, in your DVN account, you can see your complete transaction history. You can see the recurring donations you currently have on if you've opted to. You can also at any time basically get a year-to-date document that says, here are all the donations I've made this year for tax receipt purposes, and you just give them to your accountant or you use it yourself. And then at the end of each month, all the funds are sent to each one of the organizations and or activists. They fill out a bank form with us and provide us with a voided check when we start. And then so we bank transfer all the funds to them at the end of each month for all the funds that they have raised.
Right. So you're taking care of the accounting between you and the activists and you and the donor. So
and everybody has full transparency. So you and your account as a donor have complete transaction history. And then the activists have their own back-end dashboards of all of the metrics around, so a donor can be anonymous or not, but whatever details they choose to share, the line items are there. It says this came in and this is, 50 cents for processing if it's $1,000 donation.
Okay.
And so they get complete transparency, including reports of what has gone into their bank account and how all the math ties together.
Now, is it possible as a donor, let's say I wanted to donate to a specific thing that's not in DVN. As a donor, is it possible for me to say, hey, I want to donate money to you guys because I don't want to deal with the accounting with them because they're young or they're starting out and they may not be organized enough. Is there a way for me as a donor to say, hey, can you get this guy in your system so I can donate to them?
So that happens quite a bit. And one of the most common use cases for that is a lot of the companies have matching capabilities. So when I was at Microsoft, they used to match 1-to-1, and at certain times they would match 2-to-1.
Yeah.
So when I was at Microsoft, I would give to Sienna, and like a $10,000 donation would turn into a $30,000 donation.
Nice,
they would match 2-to-1. And so, there are folks that approach us and say, hey, look, I have a matching campaign going on. I would love for it to be to this organization, but kind of getting listed as a credible organization in a lot of those matching programs is hard. And so we've done that work. And so we get that request all the time. And then so if it makes sense, we'll have kind of vetting conversations with the organization. If somebody's giving to us as a 501c3 organization, by and large, generally speaking, we will only pass along that tax status to another 501c3 organization. That's generally how it works. And so we just have to make sure that any organization that's on the platform, if we're providing tax deductible status, that organization that's receiving those funds have applied for or currently have status, or fall into one of a couple of other categories that the IRS allows for.
Right. So when DVN becomes this middleman, you guys obviously have your own expenses and operating costs. If I'm donating, let's say I want to donate, $1,000 to some project where they're helping immigrants that were caught at the border, and they're being held and they need legal advice or whatever. So let's say there's a project set up somewhere and I want to donate $1,000 to that group. When I go through DVN, does my $1,000 go to that group, or does DVN take a cut, or is there a way for me to split what I'm donating between the two? How does that work?
Our focus for DVN has always been to promote the activists and not really raise funds for ourselves. The way that it works, let's say it's $1,000 donation to that project. The only funds that will ever be kept at DVN is for processing fees. That's it. So on
like bank processing fees, you mean?
Bank processing fees, things, payment processing fees.
Right.
So off $1,000 donation, Forte, our ACH provider, would charge us 50 cents. So we keep the 50 cents. We send the $999.50 onto the project. There's no money that's retained at DVN for any operational or administrative costs. We do allow for somebody to tip us on top of the $1,000 and say, hey,
okay,
do you want to give us 3%, 5%, whatever it is to help us run our operational costs? But everything we've done is to put activists at the forefront. And then even on DVN, we don't really list ourselves as a searchable organization to give to. There's only once per year that we even in email newsletters and social media and marketing, only once per year on Giving Tuesday is where we ask for funds to help us operate ourselves, just because we don't want there to be any confusing messages out there. This is all about the activist work. And just one other point on that. You get to know some of these activists when you've been doing this work for 10 years. And the amount of time and effort and dedication they put into this and doing this full time when they could get paid 3, 4, 5x out in the private sector.
Right.
There are Harvard lawyers that could be making $500,000 easy that pay themselves very little to do this public work. And so I really think those people are the heroes of our community, kind of really, really giving of themselves in a way that you don't see very often anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that goes beyond this one, right? You're giving up your potential salary to do this kind of work. I mean, it's admirable. So
I'm gonna text the guy real quick because I was supposed to have an 11 o'clock with him. I'm just gonna tell him to be a few minutes late.
This will stay in the podcast.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, so that's interesting because I think those are the kinds of things that people are always wondering. How does the money get transferred? Where does the money go? How do you guys stay operational? And then you also mentioned the Giving Tuesday, but then there's also this one week, DVN week, or what do you call it?
Dasvandh week. And so really we started this back perhaps in 2013.
Okay.
And really it's part of that elevation of the concept of this one, which is we wanted to bring this one to the forefront. And so every November, roughly in mid-November, we will take 10 days and we will run a campaign with matching funds that that encourages and promotes people to give during that time frame. And so it's been wildly successful since we started. I think the first year, our goal for the week back in 2013 was to raise 50. We raised $80,000 over the course of the week, and we were thrilled. And now, it's between $150,000 to $200,000 over the course of that 1 week that we're able to raise. So it's just a good way to focus the community on the concept of this fund. People have been very generous towards giving to the matching fund because it really inspires other people to give when they know that they're going to get a 2-for-1 or 1-for-1 match. So they're giving.
Yeah, your money's doubled. Your money gets doubled by donating to something.
But in some cases, it's even better because on recurring donations, we'll either $100 bonus for every new recurring donation that started that lasts for 12 months. Or we'll do other campaigns around recurring donations, because the recurring donations really help organizations and activists plan for the future, right? Like one time is great, but building a sustainable funding pipeline for people is incredibly important, because they can make hiring decisions based off that, or they can make long-term strategic bets based on that, which is really what our community needs.
Yeah. And, it's interesting too, because something about when you were just saying now clicked in me too. When we collect a paycheck and we got to contribute to a 401k or whatever, we like that all to happen automatically, so that we don't even really see it. And then that way it's not on your radar for paying your bills and living your lifestyle, right? It's gone before you get it. You almost need to think of this one the same way, right?
And that's exactly why we're going to roll out a feature called Auto Dasvandh. And really, when we started this, my mental pattern was mint.com, if you remember mint.com.
Yeah, I know mint.com. Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of have this place that was a portfolio of giving. So you could maintain and log in and kind of see this pie chart of, hey, this year I've given, 30% towards Sikh education, 40% towards civil rights, and then be able to change your allocation.
And just like we do with our mutual funds and retirement accounts, exactly. You see a graph and you can change the percentages. And
so highly related to what you were just saying is then you extend that concept to Auto Dasvandh, and it just comes out of your account into your Dasvandh account. And then you have the opportunity to allocate that money at a later time, however you want. And you kind of have this portfolio, if you will, of stuff you've given to, and then these funds to allocate, but only through, I think, and that's why we talk about the product offerings that we need to create to be able to raise more funds to give to activists. It's through concepts like that I think will be important. So it is just something that happens much more automatically than the actual tangible act today, where you have to actively go and make that donation.
Yeah. Well, you said that DVN is pretty much where you want to spend your time, but is there anything else you've been working on, or anything else you are involved in that you want to talk about or want to mention?
I think so. I spend some of my time really trying to have conversations with and mentor some younger Sikh kids that are interested in entrepreneurship. Yeah. And I think as a community, we've, for whatever reason, I can't explain it, but for whatever reason, we've always been like very gritty and entrepreneurial. And it's just so many young Sikhs I talk to kind of have this ambition. And so I get a lot of personal enjoyment out of just talking to young Sikh kids, just based on my background, and now not just through my company, but my angel investing, just talking to them and either giving them resume feedback or hearing their pitch ideas and helping them beef up their pitches. So that's something that actually is a lot of fun for me, and I like to spend my time doing.
Yeah, no, that's really great too, because you're right about, like, I think Sikhs in general, we don't necessarily, I shouldn't generalize too much, but we don't necessarily want to have a boss that tells us what to do. We're used to being Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, right? We're independent. We're sovereign. I'll figure out what do you need. I'll figure out how to do it, and you can pay me. I think there is definitely that spirit. And there's plenty of people that work jobs and they're great people. They're great Sikhs. I'm not trying to make it a Sikhi thing, but I think you're right about that spirit. It's almost like we can do anything spirit, and just give me a chance and I'll show you that I can do it, and I can do it better than it's been done. Let me go make my own way.
Yeah. And it's nothing more than an observation, right? This happens a lot. Like I will talk to an outsized number of folks that kind of have this ambition. And I think it's fantastic, right? I think go and create. And one of the great things, so with the merger with Manzil, there's obviously a number of Sikhs that have gone and built great companies and had very large exits and the like. And I think it's great. And one of the things where we want to head with EVN is kind of this mentorship network of people that have built and sold very large companies. And it's not just that angle, right? So any profession that people want to go into, we as a community have to do a much better job at encouraging that, right?
Yeah.
It's there's been more conversation the past 5 years about not just forcing our kids into the medical field or being a lawyer or what have you, or an engineer.
Yeah.
Exactly. But so I think the conversation is getting better, but we have to encourage our kids. Like, I'm actively trying to tell our kids, I know if you don't want to be, I certainly have no ambition for you to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, because I think what our Panth needs is something different. And get, my eldest daughter, she's got a bit of a creative flair. So I want her to go and create art or write books or what have you.
Right.
Like, I can imagine her writing phenomenal Sikh history books.
Right.
And so I think that's something we need to encourage. And so the mentoring we do as a community, like you were talking
planting that seed early, getting that thought in their head, and actually made me think, like, as a young entrepreneur, somebody might think, hey, I'm going to establish this company, and the company itself can help fund projects, right? Like, do you guys have companies that are part of the Dasvandh Network that are donating as a company, not just individuals, or does it even work that way?
So we will get donations from companies. It's very interesting because we've seen companies attempt to mix Dasvandh with their company, and it gets tricky. I've talked to multiple people about this.
They're just trying to avoid taxes. Is that what it is?
No, it's not that. The advice I got when I was younger was to separate your Panthic activity from your business and professional activity.
Okay.
A well-known Toronto Sikh that we both know kind of said that to me, and I thought about it, and I don't disagree with that advice. I remember one of the startups that started hitting traction was doing, at the time of 9/11, was doing a lot of their diverting their resources to go work on 9/11 related things.
Okay.
It got messy from not everybody was on the same page and so on and so forth. So my personal philosophy has been, I will use my company as a funding source for my Dasvandh, in the sense that, like, I'll draw my income from the company and then I'll give my Dasvandh how I see fit, versus entangling the company in any decisions where not everybody might feel the same way.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, look, we've done like an hour almost, or maybe a little more, about an hour. If there's anything else you want to add, feel free, but I really do appreciate you coming on. I'm really glad that you were on, because, like I said in the beginning, you kind of started the name, the Nihung. You were there in the beginning when we did akj.org and stuff. So it's kind of like, this is a resurrection in a way. I'm trying to bring this thing back and have discussions. I think the big thing with me previously with the Nihung was a lot of message board warrior type stuff going on. Yeah, IRC stuff. And then I started to see a lot of negative comments, like about the Nihung. They're still out there. If you Google it, you'll find message boards where people are like, have you guys heard this guy? Did you see what he said? Because I didn't agree particularly with a certain group or a certain Gursikh person, and sometimes I wasn't even disagreeing. I was just kind of laying out both sides of an argument, because I tend to do that. You know me, I like to debate and stuff like that. And I started getting trashed. I mean, people were just so angry at me and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of just gave it up. 2004-ish. I was just like, forget it. I'm not going to do this anymore. And then recently I got inspired because sitting around, COVID is going on, nothing to do. I'm listening to all these other podcasts, and I thought, this would be fun. Bring the Nihung back and do podcasts and talk to people. And I really appreciate that you were supportive in that fact and came on and talked about all the stuff you're doing.
Man, because I think that through the conversational style, you'll get a lot of great conversations, a lot of great insights. Because a lot of the podcasts, even the one I did back in 2015, they were like very tight interview style, 20 minutes. and you get a lot of good insight, and you kind of compact it down. But the conversational style allows you to kind of get to things that you otherwise wouldn't get to.
Right.
And I think you're particularly going to be good at that. And so I think it'll be pretty exciting because there's a lot of great people in our community, and we don't know about all.
Well, no, it's not even that we don't know about them all. Sometimes we don't know them all.
We don't know their story, right?
Yeah. So like I got some really good people coming on after you. Had a couple of good ones.
I'm sorry you had to start with me then, man.
No, you're not the first one. You're number 4. But I think people know DVN or they've heard Inderpal Singh, but seeing your personality, hearing the way you talk about stuff, that's going to click with somebody differently. And that's what I'm hoping people see is like, I don't want them to just see a Kirtanya and think of the Kirtanya. Understand the personality. This is the person. This is the things they're passionate about. And look at how they're implementing their Gursikh values in their regular life, which is very similar to what you did. You took all the lessons you learned in your regular life and you're applying them in a Panthic way. And I hope that inspires people to hear that, this, kind of get a feel for who you are, not just that there's this organization out there and these are the names associated with it.
Right.
So
I think it's awesome. The platform's going to be great. Now I'm like very interested in looking forward to hearing the stories behind some of the folks as you release.
Yeah, I think you're really going to like it. There's some really good ones coming up too. So I'm hoping. And the idea here is people can talk about anything. If you're passionate about health and fitness, come on. If you want to talk about politics, come on. I like all of these topics, and I will gladly learn from all different kinds of people that know what they're talking about in that field. Like I love the idea of getting that information out of them. But anyway, all right, Inderpal Singh, Cyber Suda, thank you so much for stepping into the Net Nihung's arena.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully we'll talk soon.
Waheguru ji ka khalsa.
Waheguru ji ka khalsa. Waheguru ji ki fateh.